Hi, my name is Beth Gantz, and I'm a business coach at the Small Business Development Center at Lorain County Community College. And I'm joined today by Rick Slark of Slark Consulting Group. And thanks for joining us again for one of our chats, Rick. It's always
Oh,
great
sure.
to have you. And so, the other day you and I were chatting about business processes, and it got me thinking that I think we need to dive into this a little more and help our clients understand when to put processes together, how processes could help you grow, and all of that stuff, because it can be daunting sometimes
Sure.
to figure out that. And you were just mentioning when you started your business, but what are some of the benefits of having processes, or when do you start keeping track of these processes in your business? And what is considered a process in your business? What are some examples?
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, that was a great conversation. I love that you and I always get talking, and we
Yeah,
always have these conversations that kind of just blossom
right,
as we talk,
right.
just kind of out of experience and stuff. So I think business processes is a really good subject to understand as you're a business owner, because it's constantly fluid. So when you do it, when you don't do it, it's just kind of a fluidity. But you need to know that as your journey as a small business owner, it's these processes and times of process are going to change, but they're always going to be there. And so you have to pay attention to that facet of it. So I like to define the business process as it's just a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. So let's say you're going to hire, and you know you're going to be hiring consistently. So you should build a process for that. And how do you do that? And so those kind of things are really important. When should you do a process? I always say anytime there's a repeatable act, or you need to do this job over and over and over again, you should create a process for it. And there's several reasons for that. And you asked me what the benefits were for creating those processes. And I'm going to give you a few of them. First of all, it saves time. You don't reinvent the wheel every time. I've done this myself, and I have clients that do this. Every time they're going to hire somebody, they have to look for the documents. They have to try to figure out what they're doing, instead of having like job descriptions and who's going to do the hiring, what platform are we going to use to do the hiring. Just have some of these things set. And so they're constantly like
Right.
hurried around trying to find this stuff. So
Yeah.
it saves a lot of time. First of all, if it's a repeatable event in your business, you should have that process. It saves time. The other thing is it allows interchangeability. So a lot of us have employees coming and going, coming and going. And if the owner holds all of this information in their head or in their mind, then they have to retrain every time they hire a new person for that. Whereas if they have a process for that, they are able to plug in employees in a really systematic way, and it's just allows for different personalities and different types of people to fill that position. One example I had of that, I was working with a small restaurant, and just kind of a hometown restaurant. It was like passed down in recipes and things like that. And they were ready to move and grow a little bit. But the problem was that the owner was the only one that knew the recipes. So, and they weren't written down. They were just like passed down from grandma to mom and all that stuff. Well, when she went to hire another cook or chef, they tried to duplicate these recipes, right? Instead of the owner doing it, have somebody else doing it. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
Because there was no process for how these recipes were going. There was no interchangeability there. You could not do that. And a real problem arose when the owner had to have an emergency back surgery and was down for like 6 months. Well, how do you make the biscuits, right? No one knew how to make grandma's biscuits
Right.
because there was no process for it. So it allows that interchangeability, which is so crucial for that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I got a couple more things I'll say, but I was talking.
Definitely, because just to your point, if we hold as owners everything and we don't write anything down, life happens.
Yep,
And
for
when
sure.
I owned my store, I was out for a month um with a surgery. And thank God I had bought my store from someone and they had already put some processes in place. So my employees knew what to do. But still, I mean, I got phone calls and emails and stuff like that because you just do stuff as an owner and you don't think about it, but it's so important to write stuff down. And, sometimes I think owners have a hard time articulating what to write down. Well, I just do it. Well, walk through it and, and write down each step. And that's a process.
Yeah.
And, it's so easy. And I don't know if, I mean, we can do other examples too, but you know, what point do startups, like, should you just start with processes from the very beginning? I mean, sometimes we talk to our clients about when they're first getting started, like, just make your accounting on Tuesdays or whatever, right? Just get in the habit of always, so you don't forget to pay a bill or forget to pay sales tax or something like that. But I don't know what your thoughts are on putting all your processes in place from the beginning.
Yeah, I made that mistake. I was really, so just my personality tends to be really linear. And so I love processes and steps and, I'm constantly, people make fun of me because my conversations are, well, number one, and then number two, and they even make fun of me for that. So it's that kind of a thing. So when I started my business, I had just read, E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, who is a business guru, but
Yes.
it's a good book. It really is a good book. And it kind of goes through the story of a bakery, a small bakery. And so it's a great book for if you, as an owner, would want to read that. But what I did was he talks about in this book about whatever action you take or step you take, you write it down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this was a startup business that he was referring to. And so I did that. And then what happened was I didn't do any of that because as the business grew and changed and morphed, those things that I had written down in that moment were not even relevant at that point.
Right.
And so for most startups that are really startup just getting going, I don't really recommend they do a bunch of processes. I mean, you could do some, like you're talking about, accounting on this day, social media. We're going to do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Right.
Those kind of processes are fine, but to really develop these critical steps for the business early on like that, I'd rather you spend your time finding your sustainable and profitable market. And going out and testing and beta testing your products and talking to people versus these internal processes. I don't think it's really helpful at that early stage.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder sometimes if you get too caught up in the process, you're not seeing how you could pivot and stuff, because at the very beginning of your business, it is all about testing and potentially pivoting and change, so your processes then change.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of that. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be too concrete in those, because it really, for me, was a waste of time. And I took a lot of time to do it. And it was really, I have a notebook just to my left that's got all that stuff in it. And I'm like, what were you doing? What were you thinking about? So I did make that mistake, and hopefully I'd save some people some time by just talking about it.
Sure. And, as you grow, then you can start to implement and you have a more solid footing of what your business is going to look like for a while. Then you start to step back and figure out some of these processes, because as you're growing, at that point, you probably need to start delegating, hiring an assistant, a virtual assistant, or, a bookkeeper, somebody like, or a salespeople or whatever it may be. So that's the time, that's probably when you really need to step back and start these processes.
Yeah, like at the beginning when I was talking, the subject of process is always evolving. It's something that as an owner, you have to pay attention to this process and think about it. But like you said, there comes a time and a place as the business begins to grow that your processes are going to become more important to you. Because what happens as the business grows, it becomes more complex. And communication, so you started off with a couple employees, maybe now you have a few more. And what happens is the communication is a huge problem. And if you don't have processes for that communication, you know, most of these small business, their meeting is like at the lunch table, right? That's their business meeting. But as the business grows, the communication becomes much more important and it becomes much more complex. And so that's why you really need the systems to do that. Yeah.
Okay. And how should your processes be aligned with your goals, or does that even matter? I don't know. We chatted briefly about that as well, but maybe I'm going in a wrong direction. Or I know we also chatted about the value chain. So yeah. So I don't know if
let me finish up with these benefits, and then I want to talk about, and then we'll go to that value chain, because that is so important, and I love the question. If we could just hold off on that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me finish these benefits. We talked about it saves times, it's interchangeable. The other thing it does, it improves quality. So let's talk about, you know, everybody knows McDonald's. You could go to North Carolina and you're on I-75 or whatever, and you stop at the, you know, exit 54 and you get a McDonald's hamburger. Well, it tastes exactly like the hamburger in Arizona, right? And the reason it does is because McDonald's early on set a process that hamburger is created exactly the same way in every store, and you have to do that, right? So it's got 3 pickles on it, it's got the mustard, it's got the ketchup, and not only that, then they designed this equipment that delivers the product onto the hamburger exactly like it's supposed to do. And that's how they keep their quality. Well, that's debatable, I guess, with some people whether it's quality or not, but you understand what I mean. It's a consistent product, and the way that you do that is through process. You can't just have the Arizona McDonald's store doing whatever they want and creating their hamburger however they want. It's not allowed. So that's one of the things. It does improve quality and consistency in the product. So that's really important about the process. The other thing it does is it improves efficiency. So, you know, you're not wasteful. And we all know that there's 2 ways to increase profit in a business. And one is to lower cost. The other one's to raise price. And so if you can lower your cost by reducing waste, you're going to increase your bottom line for sure. And then the final thing that I think is super important about process is it ensures compliance and it ensures security. So I see this a lot. An owner will say, you know, I'm really mad at so-and-so, my employee, because they are not doing what I told them to do, or they're not doing this, or they're not doing that. Well, if there is no process where the people know they have to do this work, the employee, you can't hold them responsible for something that's in your head that you thought you told them that they were responsible for.
Right.
You know, but yet I see that every day. There's some owner upset at their employees or their staff because the owners, you know, think that they have communicated this, but it's not written down. It's not processed. There's no process. And you really can't hold people responsible for that. And the other thing is about the security. So let's talk a little bit about IT or whatever. So can you go on Facebook at work on their computer, right? Can you do this or do that? Well, if they don't know what the rules are or what the process is, you could open yourself up to some real security issues as well.
Sure.
So that's a few of the benefits that I think are really important.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes I just want to real quick, I wonder if service-based businesses, you know, worry about the processes as much. I think regardless of your product or service, you need processes, but it can be easy in a service-based business to maybe not put as many in place, or, you know, but I believe that, you know, you have this, you handle a customer inquiry that comes in the same way all the time. You handle, because it saves you time as a business owner and whomever you've hired and stuff like that. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's not just about products. Service-based businesses definitely need.
Yeah, I got a perfect example. So I know a marketing company. So this marketing company will get leads come in from like their info, at website. They get that. That may be after hours that these leads come in. And they had no process for handling those. It might sit there in that mail box for 3 days. And then nobody really knew who to give it to or who was responsible for that. It was like this thing that was just this hole that it was. And so you would have these leads come in that are expensive to get. And then you sit on them for a week and nobody knows what to do with them. And so that kind of a thing, without a process, that's exactly what you're talking about. Without that process of how we're going to handle this lead, how we're going to handle these things, who's going to handle it, you could lose out on some business that way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then let me just say this about the cons. So we're talking about a lot of positive things about processes. But there are some cons about processes, and this is for people that I'm talking to that are like me, where I love process, right? My tendency is to over process.
Yeah.
And if you over process, you handcuff your employees or you handcuff the business, and it can be a real detriment to your business if you over process. And I see a lot of businesses that are older businesses, but they're in kind of a decline mode. A lot of times those businesses are over processed. And what happens is doing things the right way becomes more important than doing the right things. And so if you don't fill out form 1055 properly, you're in trouble. But so that's something that I've seen a lot of the older businesses, they're too processed. And what happens is they're not really focusing on doing the right things. They're just focused on making sure we get the form right.
Right. They can't think about how that I think it hinders you from being creative.
For sure.
And, pivoting if necessary. So
and the problem with that is that if you're in a company that is over processed, creative people won't stay.
Right.
Because they're not going to be, these creative people want to do their thing, right? They want to do, and they're not going to be jailed by these forms and all of that stuff. So they typically leave to find a place that's kind of less processed. So what you're left with is people that love process.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So, let's move on let's talk about the value chain, if that's where you want to go next. So
this is more of how so we've talked about the benefits, the cons, that you need those. So now how do you really do it, right? So it is my personal belief, and don't be like overwhelmed by this value chain thing. It's really pretty simple. We'll try to boil it down. But I believe all competitive advantage for a company, you being different, you being more innovative or whatever, I believe all of that comes from your value chain and the way you do business. So in every business, there are certain products. So for instance, every business needs a sales, right? So we'll just do it. So you need product development. You have to have a product or service that you're selling, all right? So how are you going to sell that? What is that product development, all that? You just simply think about that. What does my business do? And you just write that down. This is what my business does. All right. And then the second thing would be like purchasing. It would be like, okay, what do I need to buy and how do I need to buy it? The raw materials or the service or whatever to produce that. And you write that down, those steps. Who's my suppliers? How are we going to process our suppliers? Those kind of things. And then you move on to like, okay, now how are we going to get that thing are we going to sell it in the store? Are we going to sell it brick and mortar? Are we going to do Amazon? Are we going to, how are we going to deliver our product?
Yeah.
You write that down. And so you're just literally taking the real common steps of your business and you're just literally writing down what they are and how are we going to do those. And you create this list. And I believe that you have a product at the SBDC there called Growth Wheel that helps helps a client walk through these steps, really tangible, easy ways to just think about them and write them down. And that's all we're doing. We're just writing them down.
Right.
And then you come to the part, now, how are we going to sell this thing? How are we going to do that? What is our sales process going to look like? For instance, are we going to have virtual sales calls? Are we going to hire a salesperson to go out? Are we going to produce sales material? Do we have sales material about our products? How are we going to develop those sales materials, right?
Right.
And a perfect example of this is IKEA. So IKEA took their value chain. We've all been to IKEA, right? And so let's just kind of walk through that. So IKEA has this product that is kind of cool. It's Scandinavian. It's not for everybody, but they're not trying to be for everybody. So they've got this cool product that they've sat down and thought about, right? And then they have these people that supply it. Now think of how different they are from other furniture stores, right? So you get to the place, they have now no salespeople, right? Well, they have people in blue shirts with gold on them, but they run from you when you're in the store. They're not like coming up to you and going,
right.
Hey, can I help you today? No, I'm just looking, right? There's none of that happens there. They created a different way for you to do this. You go and you load the furniture up yourself, right? So by doing that, let's say, for instance, just by doing that, and they're not delivering, they are able to reduce costs significantly. And that is how they can produce the product then that is cheaper. And so what they have done is gone through each of these steps of their business, and they work together to create their overall goal. And that's what you were talking about. How does it align with your goals? So they wanted to be more inexpensive, but really stylish furniture company. But to do that and do it at the cost, they had to make choices. And the choice they made was they're not doing delivery. And the cool thing about IKEA is you can't copy IKEA. It's very hard because every step of their value chain is hard to copy, and all works together. So their whole business is aligned and flows together. And that's how they've become really so successful. Here's the thing about that. When you're developing your chain, you can't do everything to help everybody. Everybody's not your customer. You have to make choices during these building your value chain of what our company is going to be, what it's going to look like, what we're going to do. And when you put all those pieces together, they call that fit. So your whole alignment, your whole value chain is fit, and it's a great way to reduce costs and be able to sell your product at a great idea. So
yeah, it's so important to look at all these things, and we do have tools to help you do that. And I just want to mention that even as a solopreneur, you need to do these things. You need to understand how you're purchasing, whether a product or service, how you're delivering your product or service to the customer. All of these things. And we talk about this through the business model canvas a lot, but I think it's, especially when you're a solopreneur, you just do it, but you need to understand how this all works and who you're doing it for and why you're doing it and all of that. So not only if you're building a product and growing, but also in a service base. And then especially as a solopreneur, it's still very important. I think sometimes our solopreneurs, I'll do this today, I'll do that today, but you need to understand these things.
Yeah, we have a woman in town that bakes cookies, right? And she bakes them out of her house, and she has kind of thought through this whole process. So she would sell them at a coffee shop in town, and there would be a line out the door for these things. She thought about that, but then she thought a little bit different about it. And she created now this pickup system where she puts this rack on her front porch, right? And you go pick these cookies up, and they're not cheap cookies, right? But she's got people in front of her house all day. She puts the order out on her porch in this cool rack that she bought, and people just go and pick the stuff up, and it's no touch, no communication in that
Really
sense.
good idea, actually.
It's super
Yeah.
great. She's doing super successful, right? But she's thought through that. How am I going to do this? What way could I be different? Right. And when
Mhm.
I said earlier that the value chain that you do, the way you do things like that, that you think through each step of your business, that creates the competitive advantage. That's what makes you different. That's what makes IKEA different. They've thought through these things. And what most small business owners do, they just don't take the time to think through these things. It's not like you have to think about it every day, but you need to take a few, hours or a few and just go through each step of your business and think through it. And you'll come up with some creative ideas, I'm sure, that are different than what you're doing now that really could set you apart, lower cost,
Right.
maybe give you where you could increase your pricing. I have a client that just went across her board and increased 30% on every client. Just
Hmm.
and because she thought through this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and they all signed up. I mean, they all, no, she didn't lose one customer because
Well,
it's,
because then you communicate it through, like, these processes get communicated through your marketing, through your sales, however you do that. And the customer, if you're going after the right person, you will convert your
for sure.
sales.
Yeah.
So
And so, yeah, that's
absolutely.
crazy. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
So anything else that we should know about business processes? I'm a big process person. I like, so I could talk about this all day, but
yeah,
anything, because I mean, when I implemented process, I have a wholesale business now, but I save money when you implement processes, right? And,
exactly.
so anything else you want to chat about before we go?
Well, I just think that if for anybody in your area, like the SBDC and up in the Lorraine area and those things, I think if this is something that you want to do, that you want to really build a process, and you maybe are not quite sure how to do it, you really do owe it to yourself to connect with Beth, because the tools they have will really help you walk through this in a really good way. And as I said a moment ago, there's two ways to become profitable, and that is to raise your price and it is to lower your cost. And just like Beth said, this is a great way to lower your costs because you're more efficient. And I think you'd be amazed. So I really would want you to take advantage of that. I think it's a great tool that you have.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. We love Growth Wheel. We use it often with our clients, and they have some great worksheets and things to prompt you into helping you understand how to get your processes and many other things for your business. So thank you. So it's always great chatting,
Yeah,
and I look forward to another conversation. So thank you very much.
that was
Talk
my
to you
pleasure.
soon. Yeah,
Yeah, my
thanks.
pleasure. Thanks.